What's up, team?
What's up, team?
How are we doing today? Good? All
Hey,
right. Does anyone have anything right off the bat they want to talk about? This is kind of the first week where we get practical. So, yeah, what's up, Amy?
Okay, yes. Okay, awesome. So, my client who has really bad stands with knee hyperextension. I did the knee extension assessment on her. She, even though like she stands with hyperextended knees, she cannot get to 180 degrees on the knee extension.
Yeah, that's probably because what do you have to do to extend your knee fully?
Pardon?
What,
Yes, yes, yes. You have to extend your knee in order to, stand up.
well, you also have to internally rotate it, right? So if you're standing in hyperextended knees, it's often an external rotation problem than an internal rotation problem. So I think that makes sense that she can't internally rotate because is she narrow?
Yes.
Starting from a place of external rotation, and then she's hyperextending her knee further, which pulls the kneecap outward laterally, and then she basically can't IR from there.
Yes, yes. Oh my God! Thank you so much. I have been like really pushing like her medial hamstrings, and she's like, "You're a sociopath." I'm like, "No, this is because I care about you."
Exactly. Yeah, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. It sounds like you're on the right track.
Because I mean, because like she'll like will be finished with an exercise, and then she'll immediately just stand in that extended knee position, like no, we just worked on your medial hamstrings, and so I'm like, Ileana, like your homework assignment, your only homework assignment you have between Wednesday and Friday is anytime you're standing is to think about standing with a micro bend in your knees.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, because I just look at them, just like ah. So, but I'm, yeah, what can you do?
Yeah, well, good work, Amy. That's awesome. That's really cool. Has anyone? I know some people got together and actually did some exercises with each other, which is great to hear. Does anyone have anything else they wanted to hit? Yeah, Raul, how did yours go?
Yeah, so yesterday we were with the group, we did some assessments, and I have already asked this, and again, it keeps in my mind, and I don't fully understand it yet. For example, in my case, I had a bad active knee to chest and bad squat, right? So we assume that I need to work on my external rotation, right?
Right.
But then if I test my hip rotations in a 90 hip flexion, I have like good amount of external rotation and nothing in my internal rotation. So I don't understand that.
Yeah, and I know what you mean. So if you're going to flex your knee to 90 degrees, then you're already biasing IR, right? Because where is internal rotation being maximized? It's at 90 degrees of hip flexion, and that's where you're starting. So if you have sought a compensatory pattern and you've extended your low back and you're in anterior pelvic tilt, then that helps you pick up IR, right? Now, if you lay on your back and go to 90 degrees of hip flexion, which is biasing internal rotation, then oftentimes you can't internally rotate because you can't get any further into internal rotation. That's oftentimes what happens with wide ISAs who don't have a lot of IR, but they display a lack of ER a lot of the times. So that's why I don't put a lot of stock in the femoral rotation tests because they often just leave people more confused than gaining understanding. You know what I mean? Because you have to understand where they're starting from and how the constraint of where they're starting from is affecting their test measurement. So that's why I don't even call it an essential assessment. So just the other thing that can happen is if you're narrow, for example, and you're just in that anterior pelvic tilt and then you're laying down, then you still just don't have a lot of room to internally rotate because when you go to 90 degrees, you're going to the place of probably what is your limit of internal rotation. And then you're going to not be able to internally rotate from there, but you're going to be able to externally rotate quite easily. This leads me to another question that I got from someone who can't be here right
But
now. Oh,
Connor,
go ahead.
um, so I don't know what am I because I'm pretty even, like 100 in my ASA. So I assume I'm white because of my assessments. So in this case, my first thing to work on is still external rotation because of the test.
I think you're like Seb, who has like that 100-degree ISA. And if you guys saw his assessment, he has like that narrower frame like you do, Raul, but he has sought compensation. So he looks like 100 degrees, but he's probably starting from a place of narrow. I highly doubt that he was wide and then he just got more narrow because his body frame suggests definitely that he's narrow. And he just has a wider ISA probably because he's sought in inhalation strategy, which is to widen out the ISA, kick on the rectus, which narrows like to do further down the compensation pattern. So I think that you're probably more narrow and you've just widened out your ISA. The only time I would call someone wide is when they look like me. Look at my ISA angle. That's me. Like that's a wide. A narrow is when the narrow's like, I don't know, that like that they're probably starting from a place of narrow. Wides have to be like, whoa, you've got something going on here, like a big obtuse angle. If you want to go back to basic geometry,
So in my case, I should start working on internal rotation or external rotation.
expansion first.
Expansion first, even if I'm narrow.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Because regardless of, I used to give people internal rotation first, but I found that that caused more problems than solutions because internal rotation is inherently compressive and compressing people more is often not a great solution because compensations are compressive strategies. All right. I wanted to answer that other question that guy had. I had one person ask me, why is it that on a squat you see people drive their knees outward? And I think I may have touched on the past and how that helps them create internal rotation by shoving their knees outwards. What they're usually doing in that case, like let's say for me, for example, if I wanted to squat and go really deep, jamming my knees outward like this helps me create internal rotation. The reason for that, even though that looks like it's external rotation, is because, okay, they're here. Where are they at? 90 degrees usually. They're going to push their knees out, which helps them then create an internal rotation moment. Because they're not able to create a further internal rotation moment because at 90, it's very similar to the femoral IR test. So they're already at IR and they can't get there anymore, so they're going to do this. And that allows, and you'll always see it too. When they do that and then they go into the sticking point, their knees go inwards just a little bit right after that because that's them going into that internal rotation. So I hope that answers that person's question. Do we have any other just general questions? Anything about the exercises? Do you guys want to do an exercise? Anything at all?
I have more questions.
Sure.
So I know coaches that have done your courses, Alex and Harman's, and they usually speak about compression in pelvis, like in different places, like let's say under the sacrum or over or in front. And it confuses me because we haven't talked much about it, like we did with the rib cage. Can you just summarize a little bit that?
For sure.
Or...
I don't. So if you guys ever do Alex Effers, which I recommend you do after this one, I think this provides a good foundation for that. And Alex is a friend of mine, and I think he does a really good job. But anyway, Alex will talk about how there's layers of the pelvis, just like there's layers of the rib cage. He talks about it like below the level of the trochanter, like Bill Hartman will talk about it. He'll talk about this section right here being one, and then above the level of the pelvis right here being another one. Now, I don't get into that because I find that's really confusing for people who don't have a fundamental understanding of what's going on in the first place. So I think that I keep that out because also that's Alex's idea and I just don't want to like take everything this guy's done and make it my own. So I think he uses that and I think that's fine. But I think it's also important to think about just what's going on biomechanically within like an asymmetrical pelvis first, and then you can start to get into the weeds more. But just if you want to think about it like the pelvic floor. So right here, if I'm in this asymmetrical pelvis, then look at what happens to it. I have a post on Instagram that actually shows this very well visually. But basically what happens is the left pelvic floor becomes more descended and expanded, and the right pelvic floor becomes more compressed, if you want to think about it that way. So the right pelvis is biased towards more of a state of exhalation and the left towards a state of inhalation. So because of that, in fact, I think if I just brought that up, that might be helpful for you. Let me pull up my page really quick. If you go back to the week 2 and you look at what I talk about with the musculature, you'll find that I talk about the muscles on the right side of the pelvis being more compressive and the left side being associated with more of that expansion. Hopefully I can find it. Yeah, here we go. Right here. In the PRI pelvis course, they talk about this a lot. They'll talk about how the left anterior is expanded, the left posterior is technically compressed, and this is as far as I will go with it with you guys, because I don't think you need to necessarily know more than that. And honestly, like, I don't even talk about this because I think that's just one more thing. And that's the hardest thing about this course is we have people that are very advanced and people that are starting out totally from the beginning. So I have to find that balance of how much information do I give you guys and how much do I not tell you. But I don't think looking at the pelvis in those 3 layers is important for you guys to, I think that's one way of doing it, but I don't think it's the only way. I think if you think about it through the phases of gait, and I think if you think about it through just the musculature and positions associated with that, you'll be totally fine. It's just another way to skin the cat, basically.
Connor?
Yeah.
Okay, so with this left AIC pattern, I'm noticing that, like, it's all when I'm assessing people, I think I see it, but then I also am trying to be aware of not just like looking for it because it's in my, it's in my face a lot these days. Mm-hmm. But I'm finding that, like, for instance, I'm like, okay, this person is, let's say, maybe out of their left leg, right? Like when I catch them like talking before the assessment, they just like go right into the right side. But then when I look at the assessment, it's like their left side is actually closed down. So can you have like secondary and tertiary compensatory patterns for the AIC as well? Like, I'm a little confused with that.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some.
Those are called the pelvic orientations. You know what I mean? Those 3 from the compensatory patterns week. When you see a left AIC you see it's underlying, right? I say like the underlying left AIC a lot. Like they have patterns of compensation built up on top of it, but they also present with something that looks a little funky. In that case, it's almost always a pelvic orientation issue. And something I've been doing actually within the last, I forgot that I could do this. The last 2 weeks, something I've been messing around with is just, if I know someone has this based on the assessment results, I'll have someone palpate their ASIS and literally feel which one is higher. And then if you guys saw that, that story I had with that MLB pitcher, this dude, his left hip was here and his right hip was down here. And he wasn't understanding what I was saying until I had him do that. He was like, oh my God, my left side is just so much higher. And he has a crazy lateral orientation. So what he needed was to bring, and that's the thing, like people think, well, if my left pelvis is higher, why are we doing stuff for me to get into my left hip? It's because we need to get your left hip back. We don't need to get it up more. We need to get it back. And there's a difference between those 2 things. So, sorry, Tyler. to answer your question, I would say look at the pelvic orientations, measure those, and then that's probably what's going on. If you see something that's like, well, you look like you were in a left AIC at one point in your life, but now you look like you're just a compensation after that.
Okay, so to get them back to like the OG AIC would be a step in the right direction, and then from there you can keep going even further?
Yeah, I think because that's what we're trying to do, right? Get people to where they should be and then
Okay.
give them what they need on top of that. after that. That's like the easy way to summarize this whole 12 weeks.
Okay, got it. See you later.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
You have seen the videos, and you mentioned a phrase a couple of times, clearing them bilaterally. Can you just once again maybe explain what you mean, and maybe bring in a case where you are doing where you're clearing them bilaterally?
No, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Absolutely. So I do have a couple people that come up to my mind right away. Okay. So when I say clear people bilaterally, I mean do phase 1 within everything we talked about on Monday. So alternating activities on both sides of the body, not going asymmetrical is basically what I mean by clearing them bilaterally. Give them ER expansion, give them their rib cage where they need it, and do that on both sides of the body. Don't do anything asymmetrical, because we need to downregulate the tone of the tissues that are closer to the surface, like the lats, the glutes, the back extensors, the quads, the hip flexors, muscles like those that are compressing this individual and holding them in their pattern bilaterally. So something I would do is something like this. I would do something like this. I would do something like this if they can handle it. But more so, some of my favorites, some of my go-tos is going to be something like this, this, and this. Those 5 right there are probably the ones I use the most, and I have a lot of success with them in that first phase, depending on what their ISA is. So that's what I mean by clearing them bilaterally.
All right. So and when you also saying bilaterally, because bilaterally for me means that you do 5 reps on that side, you do 5 reps on that side. Is that what you mean also by bilaterally, not unilaterally? If you see one having compressed or a decreased IR or decreased active knee to chest and so on, you do the same on both sides.
That's exactly right.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah, and to talk about someone that, for example, you might look at someone like this and go, well, your left knee is higher than your right. You clearly have a ton of asymmetry going on. You might want to address that because that's that individual's problem they're coming to you for, or limiting their ability to chase their fitness goals. So when I have someone like that, I actually made a mistake with this person. I messed up with them because what I did was I had them do bilateral stuff for 2 weeks, and then we went asymmetrical. And then what ended up happening is he hurt his back because I didn't do this for long enough. And that's a patience thing that I think is very important to consider, because we can do stuff for 2 weeks and they can be totally fine, or they can appear to be totally fine, and their measurements have improved, but they're not quite where we want them to be. We go to something else and then they can't handle it quite yet. So I think it's really important to err on the side of caution for people that present with a ton of stuff like this. But if you've got, someone who doesn't really have any issues going on, and they're not someone that raises a lot of red flags, 2 to 3 weeks is generally going to be totally fine before getting asymmetrical with them, assuming their test results are matching the end of phase 1, like I put in the slides.
I have a question that, like an addendum question, like for that. Clearing people bilaterally, you can still do like single leg stance activities, but just have them do like 5, like the same number of reps on each side. Like they don't have to stick with just strictly like bilateral exercises.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. In fact, I would definitely point people away from bilateral activities.
Okay.
But yeah, some things are like that hamstring bridge, right? That's fine. I would say use common sense. But yeah, you're exactly right.
Connor, I have a quick question. For the adduction drop test, to see if someone is truly neutral. So if they're on the right side and you're testing their left, did that left leg really go down smooth? Like a lot of times I'll do it and I feel like, obviously a little bit stuck. Should that actually go smooth all the way to the table? What are your thoughts on that?
I do. Yeah, I do think it should be. So I don't think it will ever be as smooth as the right. So let's do like a scale of 1 to 10. If the right is a 10 and it's a 10, if the left is an 8, I'm pretty happy. But if the left is a 6, but it still hits the table, that's not good enough in my opinion. I think it should be pretty smooth, but it'll never feel as good as the right, if that answers your question.
It does. And then to follow up on that real quick. So when I have somebody in the sideline on their right and I'm doing the adduction drop test, sometimes when I'll bring them back, and I'll block their hip to get hip extension, their right leg that's on the table will move. Is that a compensation? Or B, would you ever have them like hug their right knee as you bring their left leg back?
Yeah, so I think that is a compensation. If they have any movement outside of you, because it's like you doing the movement, right?
Okay.
If they're starting to move other structures of their body, it's a no-go. Just like they're going to arch their back as you bring their leg back into hip extension, it's a no-go. So I would always have that leg at 90 degrees, and if they can't do it, they can't do it.
Gotcha. And they're not holding it, right? It's just there.
Yeah, right.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to add on to that Kevin Miller you just said, because I have also done the test several times, and sometimes I feel I'm doing therapy when I try to do it the third or the fourth time, because it's really choppy in the beginning, and then I get a bit confused about, is it a negative or a positive drop test? So it's like, and that can be on both sides. What's your comment on that, Connor? If it's choppy, then it's a fail, and if it's sliding directly through, then it's then we're good.
Yeah, I think if it's choppy, I'm gonna call that a failed test. But if let's say I'm pulling their leg back, feels good, and then I'm letting it drop, and I hit one bump in the road, but it's still smooth, I'm gonna call that good. I'm gonna call that a pass. But if it's like clunk, 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 and then down, it's not good enough.
I just have like a small question. Okay, so I was working with a client yesterday in person, and I was doing. Okay, so I'm not perfect at the adduction drop test or the ogres. I'm not perfect at it because I'm still learning it. And I was with one of my clients who's been with me for like over 2 years, and she's like, yeah, let's practice. She's like, I'll be your guinea pig. I'm like, okay, awesome. So get her on the table, and I practice and I do it, and I'm like, all right, this is cool. And then after that session, another veteran trainer came up to me and told me, he's like, you're not a physical therapist. You shouldn't be palpating your clients like that. You shouldn't be doing that. And I was like, all right, thanks, bro.
Thanks, bro. Yeah.
Have a good day too.
Yeah. There is a line, and the line is, as soon as we do something where we put our hands on someone to do an intervention, then it's a problem. Or if we try to diagnose someone, then it's a problem. I will always be very clear with people that these are fitness exercises designed to help you achieve your fitness goals. I try never to say the word pain, and I try never to say the word treat as well.
Okay, yeah, because it was because this veteran trainer, he's like, you're trying to do that PRI stuff, and that's only meant for physical therapists. Trainers shouldn't be doing that. And I'm like, this is just so I can see, so I can better, write her programming, so I can better serve her, so I can help her to better meet her fitness goals. I'm not promising hey, I'm this. I can offer, this panacea and solve all your problems and all your pain issues. I'm not promising that. And this trainer came up to me. He's like, trainers should not be doing anything like that. And so I just, how do you respond to other trainers who, if you have you also don't live in New York City who where people are really rude, unabashedly. So.
This is going to be such a cop-out answer. I have dealt with that on multiple different occasions, and I think it depends if that person knows and likes you as a person. Like that's really the only difference I found that makes. And if that person knows you and they like you, then they're not going to question you really. And that goes into just, being like having interpersonal communication skills more than anything else. But I also, if someone really got, upset with me, I would probably say it's an assessment. And how am I going to help this person improve their movement, which is my job if I don't know how they move. So that's kind of what I would say, and just make it clear that you're not doing manual therapy. You're not diagnosing and treating. If you're not doing those things, you're totally fine.
Okay, yeah. I just needed to, cause like right then I was like, I don't know what to say here, like, cause it caught me like completely off guard. And like the only thing I was thinking was like, dude, you are such an asshole. Like stay in your lane. Like, I don't tell you what to do, kind of thing. Just because I have manners.
Right.
So I just needed to know like what else to put like in my arsenal if I'm faced with that situation again. So.
I've had PTs reach out to me on Instagram and say, you're not a physical therapist. You've never gone to PT school. You shouldn't be doing this. And I say, well, first of all, like, tell me where it says I can't do what I'm currently doing with people, like, as long as I'm not doing the things I described earlier. And also, if I'm helping people feel better and I'm staying within my legal bounds, then why are you upset about that? I think sometimes when people get upset at us for these things, it's often out of an insecurity they have rather than something that we're doing. You know what I mean? But when I look at it from their perspective, I understand what they're saying is because they paid all this money to go to PT school. They did all this work to go to PT school. So yeah, if I saw some kid on the internet doing something with someone, I would probably be pissed too. So I think I get it from their perspective. But yeah, hopefully that helps, Amy. And I think you're a charismatic person. If you just talk to people and they know you, I think you're going to be fine.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey, Connor.
What's up?
On slide 7 of the week 6, can you just show me with the pelvic model how the one on the left influences IR bias and the one on the left influences ER?
Yeah, it's all relative. And think about where I am in hip flexion and think about the limb arc model. So if I'm at 90 degrees of hip flexion, that's more biased towards a nutated position. And that's why, look at my back in that quadruped position.
Yeah.
Clenching my jaw real hard there. Jeez. If I'm going to be in 90 degrees of hip flexion there, then I'm not going to excessively round my back like I'm doing in the pelvic ER bias, just because when I'm rocked back, that's going to be more of a counter nutation bias due to the degree of hip flexion. I won't have a choice but to counter nutate. But what people will do on quadruped all four breathing is they will just
round everything.
And that's not what we want to do. I have my rib cage retracted, but my pelvis is still biased towards nutation because I have a slight tuck, and it's more relative nutation than this position right here.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yep. I was just wondering, like, what does it look like with the innominates? Because I'm having a hard time with all of the like ranges of motion of the pelvis. I feel like every time I get it, they say like, oh, abduction, and then it's like, oh, external rotation. I'm like, oh man, like I can't keep track of all the everything that's going on.
I hear you, man. Yeah. So I think it's very, and every time I do this, the pelvis doesn't move like this. It's really like this, and it's really like that. So to exaggerate, you're going to be like here, 90 degrees, you're going to be here. You're going to be looking like this. And in the rock back position, you're going to be looking like this. And sorry, that was not right. This. You're going to be open up. That's really hard for me to do with my fingers right here. With that. External rotation, abduction, and flexion always ride with each other.
Okay. Thanks, man.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Connor, I just had, well, first of all, Amy, just a comment on your thing. I have a client who has been experiencing trap pain for like 2.5 years and has gone to physical therapists like forever and it gets better. He said it got better like weeks at a time, but would always come back. And like I literally gave him a side plank and it's completely gone in like 4 days. So like you should tell that person to fuck off because they don't know what they're doing. Anyway, this is kind of a bit of a selfish question, but I think that it could potentially like help people out just to think about it. I don't really notice anything overly glaring in my own assessment, but I do still have that issue that I've been talking about, like that left SI issue. And today and I've had this issue in the past doing sumo deadlifts when I pull sumo for more than like 3 weeks at a time. Usually at the top of the movement, I'll get this pinching in my right hip flexor. So it's kind of like this weird situation where it's like left SI, right adductor, like right hip flexor area that usually start to bother me. But I don't necessarily see anything in my assessment that's like, whoa, this is a major like issue. So I was just kind of wondering what your thoughts were on that, or maybe if like I could post my own assessment and see what you had to say about it.
I would love to see you post your own assessment. But also, I would ask you, just based off of your knowledge of your assessment, do you present in a stereotypical, someone who lifts a lot but is a left AIC? So you have like those normal measurements that are more biased. Like, for example, your right internal rotation is worse than your left hip flexion is better than your right, and your right straight leg raise is better than your left. Do you have those things?
It's true for the upper body, I think. Yeah, true for the upper body. But for the lower body, I could do it right now if you want, but like my straight leg raises and my hip flexion tests are like almost identical for either side. And it's usually a little more uncomfortable on my left side generally, but I don't notice anything like crazy.
Can we see them? Let's see your hip flexion and straight leg raise.
Okay. Tell me if this is okay. Should I move like farther back or?
I think that'll work.
So just put you here. Put you in the corner. Okay. Is that good?
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right. So we'll do right.
Good. Now, this could just be my perspective, but it looks like your left, you can push it a little bit further than your right. Am I mistaken when I say that? Or is it just the angle of the camera?
Yeah, it feels a little easier actually.
Yeah. And it looks like you can keep your hamstring down on the other side better too when you do it with your left foot back. Yeah. Okay, let's see your hip flexion then. Yeah.
Okay, pinch on the right hip.
Pinch. Yep.
I remember you saying something about the pinch earlier.
Yeah.
No pinch.
No pinch. Okay. So this is I'm glad we're doing this because I think this is really valuable. Now, does anyone know? Actually, Ben, let's check out your pelvic rotation too. Let's have you lay on your back. Show us internal and external rotation of your femurs.
Do you want me to lay like this?
Yeah, so we can see it downstream. You know what I mean? Like the actual rotation.
Is that good?
Perfect.
Oh boy. All right, this would be right.
Okay. All right, let's see your other side.
This is gonna be bad, man.
Limited left IR. Okay. So which external, I honestly can't tell, but what external rotation feels easier for you?
This one.
The right? So everything is better on your right with rotation. Now, what orientation do you guys think Ben might have? Maybe. Give me your best guess. Is he more likely to have sagittal, lateral, or transverse oblique?
I think sagittal.
What's your argument for that?
Well, I cheated and I wrote down all the things about it in the sheet. So he's got the better straight leg raise and active knee to chest on the left side, but his rotation is better on the right side, which is like weird. And it's the only one that makes sense of those.
Yeah. So, Ben, I would say that you actually might indeed have. What's your shoulder flexion look like? Let's take that one too. Let's have you lay on the ground and show us your shoulder flexion.
It's so embarrassing.
It's okay. Mine is too.
All right, I'll do right.
Okay.
Left.
So your left is definitely worse than your right.
Yeah.
Would you say so?
I mean, they both suck, but
Yeah. So in a normal, and I have the slides up right here, in a normal sagittal, where'd it go? Orientation, the left shoulder flexion, abduction, and external rotation is better on the right. So I don't think you're all the way there, but I think you probably have an underlying orientation here. I don't think that you're necessarily, well, your active straight leg raise is not less than 50 or 60 degrees. So I think you probably have a little bit of a, and again, this is a perfect example of things are never black and white, but we can kind of put you in one or the other, right? So I don't think you're this one, right? You don't really check any of these boxes. You do have that pinching in your right hip. So I think that what's going on here is you probably have a little bit of an orientation where you're pressed here, right? You're being pushed forward. So you pinch in that acetabulum because you're being pushed over to that side. So let's try something with you and see if we can't get that right hip to not pinch.
okay.
All right. So step one, what I want you to do is I want you to lay on the ground and I want you to grab a light weight. Do you have weights, Ben?
I do, yeah.
Okay. Grab yourself a light dumbbell like this. And I want you to hold it in your right arm. I want you to go, if you have just a ledge like this, that'd be great. You're going to reach this up right here. You're going to pull your left knee back to 90. And I want you to reach, do 5 breaths right here in this position. You guys see this, or am I just doing this on a blank camera? You guys can't even see that. I'm looking at myself. Okay.
Yeah, we can see it.
Right here. Reach, breathe.
Do you want a, so I have a 10, 12, 15, 20, and 25.
Let's go 15.
And you said bench, I can just put my foot against the wall.
Yeah. Yeah. You want your foot a little bit higher, maybe like stacked on top of the foam roller.
The
Or something.
left foot.
Yeah, so you want your, let me get back down. I'm using the ledge of my wall, but right here, pull back, reach, like so. You guys can see that. Right arm reach, I like to keep my left hands on my ribs right here, just to breathe in that position.
I have a question. Why does it have to be a light dumbbell?
Because if they use too much weight, they're just going to compress. They're going to compress that. They're going to start focusing on holding that weight rather than breathing through it.
I'm gonna rotate to the left or just kind of like sit here and press.
Say that one more time.
You want me to like rotate to the left or just kind of reach it with like serratus?
The second one. Just do 5 breaths right there. Make sure you're reaching through the wall with your right heel, and you're bring that left knee at exactly 90 degrees. So push it forward a little bit more. Yeah, right there. So think about what's happening at his pelvis right now. Something I've been kind of doing with people, and I wouldn't necessarily worry about this if I were you guys, but think about what's going on with his pelvis in this position. In fact, someone tell me what's going on with his pelvis in this position. What am I biasing right now?
Internal
Left
rotation.
internal rotation and right external rotation.
And why do you say that?
Because the left hip is in flexion and the right hip is in extension.
Yes. So we got the pelvis rotating to the left here, right? Okay. So this is like a very basic ground-based activity to get him to sense that pelvic rotation to the left. Did you do 5 breaths there, Ben?
There's no bench.
Oh, you don't need to do it on your other side. Just do it on that side only. Sorry, I should have specified that.
Okay.
Oh wait, you said there's already. Oh yeah, we're not. The pinch shouldn't be gone yet. This is step 1. But is there still a pinch?
There's a lot less of a pinch.
Wow. Okay. All right. Success. You're done. Just kidding. That was step 1. Okay. Step 2. I learned this in advanced integration, and I've been using this with people with a lot of success. And this burn. If you guys want to do this with him, I think you should, because this is something that, honestly, I've been really impressed with how well it works for this kind of an issue, but also it burns like hell. So what you're going to do is left foot on a book about an inch or 2 tall, and then you're going to place your right heel in line with your left toes. And then you want a table that's about waist height. And then what you're going to do is you're going to lean over the table, round your back, and place your forearms on the table. And when you do that, you should feel a stretch in your left posterior hip, sort of that like bony posterior capsule stretch when you do this. So to summarize one more time, left toes in line with right heel, get really heavy on that back left heel, and then place your forearms on the ground and then round your back. That's the setup. Now, step 2.
Are we doing a hip shift? Are we shifting or?
We're about to do something like that. Push your left knee in, adduct your knee to get left groin. Okay? Now, stay heavy on that back left heel. Exhale through your mouth as you squat down. And then you want to get your left thigh to parallel with the floor. And then inhale through your nose and push through your left heel and come back up. You should feel your left adductor lighting up on fire. And hold that, and then keep doing 5 reps just like that. Exhale on the way down. The reason why we're exhaling is to open up that pelvic outlet on the right, on the left. And then we're gonna really bias you into internal rotation on the left. And then do 5 reps like that, going down and up, getting your left thigh parallel to the floor. And then inhale and push through your nose as you come up.
This is real bad.
It's really brutal. Yeah. If you do it right and you control it, it's so hard.
So inhale on the way up.
Yep. Make sure you feel that inner thigh, and make sure you feel that back posterior hip capsule stretch at the top at least. You might not feel it as you go down.
Yep.
Okay.
Connor, would that be a good strategy to get air into the posterior capsule of the hip? Because, well, not, I guess not capsule, but posterior portion of the hip, like right above kind of ASIS, bottom of the QL.
So I think, yes, you're going to get posterior rib cage expansion in that position for sure. Like most definitely on the left. They will have no choice. But in that specific region, I don't think there's a lot of air going there in the first place. But if you want to use the word decompress the tissues in that area, I'd say absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Now, Ben, let's see if it's pinchy. You're like breathing heavy. Let's see if it's pinchy now. And we're going to do one more thing after that to seal the deal.
Nope.
Not at all?
I feel like a little resistance, like as I really stress it, just like kind of on this, like probably where like the deep external rotators would attach, but not like there's no pinch.
Okay, there we go. All right, let's do one more thing.
There's no pinch.
Sweet. Okay. Now, the last thing we're going to do is now push you back to the left. Get that same book. Let's do prone right propulsion right here. So, book underneath left. Left knee's at 90 degrees. And then right glute. Hands on the floor. Drop the hip. Push in. And you should feel left adductor, right glute. And then you just hold that as you breathe. So make sure you're focusing on dropping the right hip like that here, and then breathe.
The right leg is a little, or right knee flex a little.
Exactly, yeah. And then, yeah, get that left knee back just a little bit more. Yep, right there. This is turning into a rehab session for Ben. This is the exact progression I used with that MLB pitcher I talked about earlier, and it cleared up his impingement 100%. This isn't going to work on everyone all the time, but if they have like that right hip pinching, this is 2 thumbs up.
They had left hip pinching. Could you do it the other, like reversed?
I probably wouldn't. I would probably do more left AF, IR stuff. Like I did, like more like the second exercise. If they had that left hip pinching.
Okay. Can you just kind of give us like a 30-second debrief of what you found with Ben, why you gave him those 3 things?
For sure. So Ben has this orientation probably like this, which is impinging his right hip when he pulls it back into flexion. When you're here, laying on the table, you can fling back that left just fine. But if you're here, look at how you're going to get pinched on that acetabular rim right here. So what we did was we first got him to orient his pelvis to the left like that. And then we had him own it with that left AFIR squat where he's here, pushing his pelvis over his left and holding that as it comes down, which creates space for his right hip to open up. And then what we did after that was we gave him that prone right propulsion to help him and literally push his pelvis back over to the left. So we had to open up the space for him to get there, own it on his left to get his left hip back, and now just to cinch things up, we want to give him the ability to get out of his right as well.
Okay, nice. I was doing an assessment with a client yesterday, and she's like really, really limited in abduction of the hip. So like feet together, kind of like dropping her knees to the side. She fractured her pelvis and broke her ribs skiing. So there's some like acute injuries that have happened, but it's extremely limited, and to the point where, yeah, like as she's dropping her knee, her right side was pinching really bad, like kind of like the, you know, like her face would change. It was that kind of feeling. But then when I put her in side lying, she could do like, you know, like whatever. I was just getting her to abduct. So like a clamshell, just as a visual, like something like that, where your feet are together and you're lifting the top leg up, and she could actually feel the right stuff, like the glute pulling. And then when we put her prone and we did like, you know, the frog or whatever with your knees wide and rocking back and forth, she said she just felt a big stretch on her adductor. So I was like, well, so in side lying and prone, she doesn't have any pain, but then when she's supine, she has the pain during pinching. I was just wondering if you've seen that before.
And you mean like the hip pinching on the right when she's in those positions?
Yeah, abduction.
Abduction.
You know.
I think it
But
would
it was-
depend on what degree of hip flexion was she in those positions.
I would say about 70 degrees.
About 70 degrees.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Yeah, maybe 70. Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah, obviously it would be hard for me to answer that question, but I would encourage you to think along the lines of, okay, what is gravity going to be doing? And then what is the degree of hip flexion going to be doing respective to the Lenmark model? So if I'm in 70 degrees of hip flexion and IR is giving her issues, but I take her into like 40 degrees of hip flexion and it doesn't give her issues, then what does that tell you? It tells you that IR is the problem. So then you have to use your assessments to cross-reference with that. So let's say, for example, she's limited in IR, and then when you put her into IR, that's when it pinches. Well, then I think that gives you an indication as to what the problem is, right? So if, let's say it's the opposite for whatever reason, let's say that it's a ER problem, and for example, she gets pain when she's in an ER phase. So it could be that that right hip is like Ben, right? So she's pinching when she goes into ER. Or it could be that she's narrow and she's open, and because she's on her right side, when she tries to go into IR, she just can't do it. And it causes her, basically, for whatever reason she's in, I can't explain it because I don't know what this girl looks like. But if she's in ER and then you trying to put her into IR and that gives her issues, then you know that she probably needs to be cleared bilaterally first, going back to that term, and then look at what happens after that. Because sometimes when we don't clear people bilaterally first, these things move. So they'll come to you in like 2 weeks and say, well, last week it was in my right anterior hip and now it's my right posterior hip. And that's why I think it's really important to clear them bilaterally, because what they tell you after you clear them bilaterally is probably more of a accurate description of where they're at.
Okay.
All right, I wish I could give you more information, but just cross-reference it with your assessments. Anything else?
Connor,
Yeah.
I wrote it in the chat that that ass burner exercise, is that a modified version of PRI retro stairs, kind of?
Yeah, so you're saying like the one where they're going, for those of you who don't know what PRI retro stairs is, you're basically going up a staircase, you're taking a step on the stair, reaching back like that. Is that the one you're referring to, Fleming?
Yes, it is, but I haven't heard of that version where you're reaching for that real leg, just that you're in line with your nose, your navel, and your knee and your foot. It kind of gave me the same feeling actually when I was up on the book.
Yeah, I think I'd have to look at the exercise library, but when I do it, I'm doing like this kind of a thing, which is my pelvis shifting over my femur into acetabular femoral, the acetabulum moving over the femur, internal rotation here. So when you feel correct AFIR, what you're feeling is you're feeling this. The pelvis moving over the femur, stretching out this posterior capsule, that's what you're feeling. So what you're probably feeling there, Fleming, is that exact same thing. You're probably feeling like that sort of deep, bony sensation. That's good. If you have that, that's a good thing.
Ben, can we do your rotation again?
One more time?
Yeah, which one?
One more time. I just want to see his rotation. Sorry, hip rotation.
I'm glad Tyler's here. Tyler, what do you think about? Were you here from when we went through that whole thing with Ben?
Yeah, I was. I'm curious to see how his pelvic ascension drop test looks, because he gets that left SI thing. Because what happens when you elevate that left foot and somebody's pelvic floor can't move, sometimes they get a lot of left SI pinching because they're kind of like shifting out of their hip, and then you get that shear force at the SI joint. But I was just curious to see how rotation cleared up, because to me it sounds like it's a pelvic floor issue based on symptoms.
I want to give you the driving wheel, man. You do something with them if you want to. Feel free.
Ben, have you ever done like a side lying hemi 90-90 position?
I've done side lying 90-90s.
Okay, so I would go into that position, but put your left hip into extension and then put something under your left knee. Does that make sense?
Which side am I laying on?
So you're on your right side.
Okay.
And then basically you're so if you have like a foam roller or something, that would work. Yeah, so go into like a side lying 90-90 on your right side.
Okay.
And then put your left knee on top of that foam roller with your hip in extension.
Should my feet be against the wall?
They can be. They don't have to be.
Okay, because that's going to be it. Okay, sorry. Can you repeat that one more time?
Yep. So that foam roller is going under your left knee, and your left hip is in extension. So put your knee back in line with the rest of your body. So the foam roller is on the ground.
Okay.
This one is literally the hardest one to describe to people over Zoom.
All right, Tyler, you're doing this right here, right?
Let
me.
Yes.
That's the one you're thinking about?
Yep. I don't know. Sorry, I didn't watch this one yet, but
oh, no worries. No, I was just trying to show everyone what you were doing, just for context.
Yeah. So the one I'm thinking of for him is the one with his foot going up and down, and you're timing your breathing to it. So when you're going into IR, you're inhaling, and then exhaling as you drop the foot, basically. So Ben, shift up to your shoulder. So you're trying to basically do a hip shift in extension with your knee bent.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Then breathe in as you lift your left foot. Breathe out as you drop your left foot. And don't let your pelvis roll backwards. So just from like a PRI perspective, this is what I would have given him, just to get that pelvic floor moving again on that left side. Based on what he said and just his assessment, I would say that was his biggest issue from a PRI perspective.
Can you describe what you mean by getting the pelvic floor moving?
Yeah, just like ascending and descending. So, if somebody can do the adduction drop test, it doesn't necessarily mean that they can ascend the pelvic floor on the left side to achieve this internal rotation position. So this is a glute med exercise, but whenever somebody has those left SI issues, this can be a really good one to clear that up.
Yeah.
So I'm always hip shifting left in this, so I should feel adductor and glute med.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. And it's just a more active. It's basically the same thing that respiratory squat is doing. The ass burner one, just in open chain. And it's a lot easier to feel your obliques here than on the squat. Because on the squat, you tend to, yeah, exactly. Because you need your obliques and your adductor to kind of like hold that left side up. And then if you push your right knee into the ground, you can see how that right knee is off the ground a little bit. So push your right knee into the ground and keep your foot, like the outer edge of your right foot, flat. That's going to push back into your left side as you internally rotate that hip.
Yeah, it's as far as it's going, man. This is really uncomfortable now.
Where do you feel it?
Like left TVA oblique, left adductor, left glute med. Pretty much.
So what happens on the squat is that people feel these muscles, but for people who are used to lifting, it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I don't buy it because I wanted to see a way better increase in rotation for your hips. So now try and do your hip rotation again and see how that feels, because it cleared up flexion quite a bit. But to me, that rotation wasn't as clean as I would want it to be.
feel like that's pretty big.
Yeah, that looks much better.
That's like 45.
Try the right side, ER/IR. Connor, would you say that now the most concerning thing is that right-sided ER? Because that's what I see the most.
Ben, can you do it one more time? I was reading Kim's question when you were doing it. Yeah, I mean, show me your right IR. Your right IR isn't great either, but I think that right ER, yeah, I think that would be something we want to clear up as well. But I mean, that's usually, right glute helps with that a ton.
Yeah, so that's why I like the right knee pushing into the floor with that too, because that's going to be right glute max, like crazy in that position, if you can hold it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Tyler. I love that. I like it when other people talk and take over. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question for Tyler? Okie doke. Okay. Kim asks, is that position one that is suitable without prerequisite movement, having cleared other stuff first? Example, should someone have that left hip extension first? And then can you explain why the breathing is timed? Tyler, I think this is a question for you. You want to take that?
Yeah. So normally you do that after you clear up adduction drop tests, because you're not going to be able to do that pelvic ascension drop test without first getting hip extension and adduction passively. So ideally you'd want to clear other stuff first. Sometimes I'll even do that in a little bit of hip flexion if they don't have extension, just so they can feel that glute med. It's not a huge prerequisite. Sorry, my dog is like stuck in here. And then I usually time the inhale during IR, because that's going to, drive eccentric lengthening of the pelvic floor. And it's just going to help to open up that posterior pelvic outlet along with inhalation to like get air into that posterior pelvic outlet as you're going into IR. That's the way that I kind of think of it. It also drives like eccentric control of the obliques on the left side as you go into IR. On inhalation, because that's what a lot of people are going to have trouble with. So that's why I always do it.
Sweet. Thank you, Tyler. And thanks for that question, Kim. I'm sure other people had that question as well. Guys, I got to run. I wish we could get to the study guide this week, but we couldn't. But I think that was productive regardless. I think it's good to like watch people, do some stuff, watch people get better. That's great. So I have been swamped with I got in a car accident this weekend, so I've been like handling that. So I haven't been able to like talk about the advanced integration stuff yet, but I still want to get on a call with you guys. I still want to talk about what I learned with respect to PRI, obviously, and then I want to just help you guys understand a couple of things that I think are important for you guys to know. And then I'll let you know when that will be, probably sometime next week. But until then, I'll talk to you guys later, and I'll see you on Monday.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.